All right, guys, I am also going to read to you some chapters from the Littles each day. It is a short chapter book, a lot shorter than Humphrey. And if you take an AR quiz when I'm completely finished and pass it, then you will get a high five. So, the Littles. I'm going to show you, there's just a little tiny drawing at the top. William T. Little and his family were tiny people. They lived in a house owned by George W. Bigg. Mr. Bigg and his family didn't know the Littles were living with them. The Littles kept out of sight. They lived in tiny rooms in the walls of the house. The Littles looked almost like people you see every day, but they were very much smaller. Mr. Little was only 6 inches tall, and he was big for a little. The other Littles were even smaller. So 6 inches is half a ruler, and he was big compared to the other ones. Here's our picture for the next day. In one way, the Littles did not look at all like other people. They had tails. The Littles were proud of their tails. They kept them combed and brushed, and sometimes the women curled their tails when they wanted to look especially nice. The Littles took everything they needed from the Biggs. Usually the Biggs didn't even know anything was missing. But once in a while, Miss Bigg would say, "Now where did that thing go? I had it right here a minute ago. It seemed to have disappeared." Only last week her son Henry had shouted, "Hey, Ma, where are my red socks? I can't find them anywhere." And of course, the Littles got all their food from the Biggs. When the Biggs had roast beef for dinner, the Littles had roast beef for dinner too. The Biggs didn't know it, but the electric socket on the kitchen counter was a secret door. As soon as the Bigg family were busy eating their cake or pie or jello, the Littles would dash through the door. They would take what they needed of the leftover dinner scraps and be back through the door in seconds. The Littles helped the Biggs in return for the things they took. And here's the picture from the second page. Only the Biggs didn't know it. For one thing, the Littles were good at fixing things. They ran back and forth inside the walls, repairing the electric wires whenever they needed it. The Littles were good plumbers, too. On cold winter days, they kept the outside water pipes from freezing. Often, they had to stay up all night, keeping the pipes warm by candle fire. Mr. Bigg could never understand why his plumbing and electricity worked so well. "I can't believe it," he would say. "I have less trouble with this old house than my neighbors do with their brand new houses." He would shake his head. "I guess they don't make houses the way they used to." Chapter 2. You can see the little right there. One day in May, the Littles were together in their living room. The two children, Tom, 10 years old, and Lucy, 8, were on the sofa next to their mother. Granny Little sat in her rocking chair knitting a red sweater for Tom. "Don't know why Henry Bigg made such a fuss when we took his old red socks," she said. "One of them had a real bad hole in the toe." Uncle Pete, holding his cane, leaned against the fireplace. "You have enough red yarn there, Granny," he said, "to start a knitting factory." Mr. Little was walking back and forth. "Please sit down, Will," said Miss Little. "You're making me nervous." "Now there's no reason for us to be worried," said Mr. Little. "The Biggs have gone on vacation before." "But never for 3 months," said Miss Little. "And what about this new family?" said Uncle Pete. "The Newcombs." He shook his cane in the air. "We don't even know them." "We don't have to, Uncle Pete. I keep telling you that," said Mr. Little. "If they're good enough for the Biggs, they're good enough for the Littles. Besides, they'll only be here for 3 months. We can stand anything for 3 months." "Why do they want to rent the house for only 3 months?" said Tom. "Isn't that kind of silly?" "The Newcombs are from the city," said Mr. Little. "Sometimes city people rent houses in the country, while the owners are away on vacation. It's like a vacation for city people to live in the country for a while," said Miss Little. "I don't like it," said Uncle Pete. "Suppose they bring a cat with them." "Oh, that would be bad, because they kind of look like little mice people." Oh, let me move my finger up so you can see. That's Grandma knitting with the red yarn from the socks. Lucy Little moved closer to her mother. "Oh, Mother, suppose they bring a cat with them." Miss Little put her arm around her daughter. Granny Little stopped rocking. "Did he say they have a cat?" She nodded towards Uncle Pete. "No, no," said Mr. Little. "He said suppose they had a cat." "Oh," said Granny Little. She started rocking again. "I hope they don't bring a cat." "Aw, who's afraid of an old cat?" said Tom. "I wish everybody would stop talking about cats," said Lucy. "I'm afraid of cats." She looked from person to person. "Please, let's stop talking about the cats." Chapter 3. This will be my last chapter for today. There was a secret lookout place behind the light switch in the hall of the Biggs house. One of the screws was missing. The empty hole was large enough for Little to look and listen through. Mr. Little spent all the next day at the lookout place. Tom Little stayed with him. They were waiting for the Newcombs. You can see on number 3, one of the Littles was climbing up number 3. Ooh, this one has a good picture. So here's one of the Littles, and they're climbing up, and that's what you see at the top. "When they come, be careful of that light switch, Tom," said Mr. Little. "Likely as not the first thing they'll do is turn on the hall light." Sometime in the late afternoon, Mr. Little thought he heard a noise. He looked through the hole. "Are they coming?" said Tom. "Not yet. Hold it, Mr. Little," heard a key in the front door lock. "Yes, here they are now. Come now. Shh." "Where's the hall light, Charlie?" It was a woman's voice. "I have it," said Charles Newcomb. There were sparks inside the lookout place as the light was turned on. Tom Little jumped. His father turned from the peephole and put his finger on his lips. "Shh." The bright light from the hall came through the peephole into the dark hiding place. Tom could see his father's face clearly. Mr. Little returned to the hole. "What a drive," said Miss Newcomb. She sat down heavily on the suitcase. "Give me a minute to rest, and I'll help you with the rest of the bags." "No need to help, Miss N," said Mr. Newcomb. "I'll get the bags myself. No tipping, please. It's part of the service here at the Big Summer Hotel." Miss Newcomb laughed. "Where do you get the energy?" she said. "From the country," said Mr. Newcomb. "I didn't realize how much I'd missed it. I get energy from just looking at all the trees in space. We're going to be here 3 months. Think of it." "I am," said Miss Newcomb. "I still have to get 3 meals a day, only now it'll be in a strange kitchen." "Listen, Liz," said Mr. Newcomb. "You've come here to write, and I've come here to paint. Nothing else is important." "Sure, sure," Miss Newcomb laughed. "Tell me that after eating hamburger for a week." "I mean it, Liz," said Mr. Newcomb. "Forget about housework. Write those stories you want to write. As for me," he twirled around and did a little dance. "This isn't my house. I'm fixing nothing, and I'm doing nothing. If the faucets drip, let 'em drip. I may not even take out the garage." "You really mean it, don't you?" said Miss Newcomb. "Sure I do," said Miss Newcomb. "I'm here to paint masterpieces, and that's what I'm going to do. And when I'm not doing that, I'm going to do nothing. I'll loaf, sit in the sun, and eat." He laughed. "Hamburgers, of course." All right, guys, that is the last part of the first 3 chapters today. Tune in tomorrow, and I will read in chapters 4, 5, and 6. This is one of my favorite books. I hope you're enjoying it too. Thank you.